Recognize Umbral Walker D01. Recognize the Caleb G D02.
Hello, team. Welcome to episode 19 of Whelmed, the Young Justice Files. Thank you for joining us in the cave. I am everyone's favorite sidekick, Caleb, and you're busted, jerkface. Allow me to introduce Rich, speedy delivery boy at your service, Howard.
It's even a speedy joke.
It really is.
It kind of is.
As always, thank you so much for joining us here on this podcast. We very much appreciate your time. If you would like to get a hold of us, our Twitter is at the YJ Files. The show email is whelmedpodcast@gmail.com. And of course, our website is crashingthemode.com.
You settling in here okay?
Oh yeah, just like home.
I know this is all very new and intimidating, but I promise you, someday, you'll get used to watching Wally eat.
And with all that housekeeping out of the way, let's turn it over to Rich for...
Hello, Megan.
The title of this week's episode is Coldhearted. The release date was March 10th, 2012. The previous episode was the week before, March 3rd. The in-episode date is November 11th. The director was Victor Cook, and the writer was John Weisman.
And we also had some special guest voices here. Most notably, I would like to point out that our old friend, I'm going to say it wrong, Nicole, is it Dubeck?
Dubuque.
Sorry, Nicole. I'm going to keep this joke going. Nicole Dubuque was Iris Wes Allen in this episode.
Yeah. She wrote really a handful of my favorite YJ episodes ever. Also did some voice acting. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We saw Cree Summer step in here for a little bit. Cree is an incredibly talented voice actress. You've heard her everywhere, even if you don't realize it. We had, unfortunately, Miguel Ferrer was in this episode, and in the real time of us recording this episode, he has just passed away. So that is very unfortunate.
Yeah, he did the voice of Vandal Savage, the fantastic voice of Vandal Savage. I didn't even realize it was him when I saw that he had passed away. I'd seen him in a ton of other like TV things, but I actually didn't realize he was the actor.
Yeah,
so
and
sad.
Very surprisingly, this episode features Ariel Winter as Queen Perdita.
Yeah,
Ariel Winter, I've only known her from sitcoms and movies. She's apparently done a lot of voice acting.
Where do you know her from? Because I only know her from what I'm going to talk about later in the Crashing Mode.
She is on a sitcom called Modern Family.
Wait, I love Modern Family. Who is she in Modern Family?
She's Alex.
What? I didn't know that. Oh man, I love Modern Family. Oh, clearly not. Clearly, I don't love it enough to know who's on it.
Apparently. So yeah, she has been doing a lot of voice acting. She has a very specific role, apparently, in the DC universe that she does all the time.
Right. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. For sure.
But here's something really funny, and I don't consider this crashing the mode at all. She's also voiced Robin.
Really?
Yeah.
In what?
She voiced Carrie Kelly in Batman The Dark Knight Returns.
Did she really? Mm-hmm. Nice. Mm-hmm. That was really good.
It was.
Like, I was not expecting it to be that good. I thought it was going to be a very bad port into the animation, and they really pulled it off.
Yeah, that was fantastic. So she's got a nice little foothold in voice acting and the DC universe, so we appreciate that.
Yeah.
But with that out of the way, let's turn it over for mission briefing.
Just in time for your next mission.
All right, in our pre-credits scene, Wally wakes up on his 16th birthday. It's snowing. School is canceled because of the snow. He's got a big table full of everything for breakfast. He thinks it's going to be a great day. We'll see. We'll see.
Post-credits, Wally arrives at the cave just before the Zeta Tube system goes down from the extreme weather, and he arrives for a not-so-surprising surprise party. During the party, Artemis finally lets Wally in on the open secret that McGann and Connor are now a couple. Robin chats with Zatanna about her now living in the cave. Then Batman interrupts the party, telling the team to suit up in polar stealth, accessories sold separately.
Exactly. Even Superboy has like a white t-shirt. It's pretty funny. The snowstorm that's locked in the U.S. Is being created by 5 flying ice fortresses. Batman has the majority of the team working with the Justice League to take down the fortresses. He states even because both Green Lanterns are off-world, because if they had both Green Lanterns, then why do you even need anyone else? For a second, Wally is excited to be on the first Team League team-up mission, but Batman actually assigns him to run a heart from Boston to San Francisco to a girl needing a transplant.
During his run across country with the heart, Wally is delayed by a fight with Vandal Savage, complaining that he had expected to see the Flash. But at the end of the fight, we get a hint that Vandal had been delaying Kid Flash on purpose.
We also get some cool cutscenes back and forth with the Justice League and the team fighting the fortresses sans Kid Flash. But then KF arrives at the San Francisco hospital and is told that the girl he was delivering the heart for the transplant for died 12 minutes before. And we know from Wally's internal monologuing that the fight with Vandal took 15 minutes. So Wally's gut punched by the news that he delayed the delivery of the heart, but then is approached by a team of doctors looking for the heart he had delivered. The person he had originally spoken to had taken the heart, and we learn that the girl is Queen Perdita of Vlatava, the niece of Count Vertigo, and Wally had been tricked by the first person he ran into outside, whose name is Henchy, and I'll talk about him in a minute.
Wally fights Vertigo and retrieves the heart. Unfortunately, we then hear in a news broadcast that the Queen died in the operating room. Vertigo faces KF, who is in a hospital bed recovering. During the conversation, Vertigo admits he tried to commit regicide against the Queen and was happy that it was unnecessary. Then KF reveals that the Queen is still alive, claiming she had died was a ruse, and Vertigo is recorded admitting to the regicide attempt. His diplomatic immunity is revoked by the Queen, and he is arrested.
In a quick couple of cutscenes, Batman and Flash confront Hugo Strange, who's the new director at Bell Rev, about the possibility that Icicle Sr., Icicle Jr., Mr. Freeze, Captain Cold, Killer Frost were the likely suspects for the 5 ice fortresses, which I assume were automated, I guess, when they took them down. I'm wondering why there wasn't anybody on there. Hugo tells them they've been in their cells the entire time, because Hugo can be trusted. We end the episode with Wally putting the backpack that had carried the heart onto the souvenir shelf, and letting us all know the important lesson he's learned about life in this episode.
One small correction there. I believe it's Dr. Freeze. He didn't go to free school for 8 years to not be called Doctor.
Dude, you're killing me.
That is whelmedpodcast@gmail.com for all complaints.
It all comes to the YJ files, and I see it. All right, let's move on to some Aster. There's some mixed Aster this week.
There is definitely some mixed Aster this week.
Superboy, are you alright?
I'm fine. Feeling the Aster.
Before we started recording, Rich very hesitantly asked me what my opinion was on this episode, and we ended up agreeing.
Yeah, I thought we might have different opinions because I know there's some mixed opinions out in the internet world, but I think we're mostly on the same page.
Yeah, we're pretty much on the same page in that there were some great moments in this episode, and there was definitely some great story elements for the larger meta plot, and I think this is very important for Wally as an episode, but the episode overall was not the greatest.
No, it wasn't, yeah. So some of my favorite things were like Robin's line about watching Wally eat was pretty funny. That was a nice little like getting Zatanna to laugh kind of a thing in a very stressful situation. It was handled really well. And I agree with you, like the bigger overall plot, like we need Wally to learn a lesson. He needs to stop being just kind of creepy and inappropriate. He needs to start learning lessons and move forward. It's a great episode for that kind of front. We also get a little bit of kind of glimpse into the bigger political structure. We already know that Lex and Raish have maneuvered the whole North-South Malaysia situation. Now getting Vertigo into position in Vlatava would have helped the Light with their plans, things like that. So kind of bigger plot things. But man, Wally is like extra inappropriate in this one, particularly at the beginning, which highlights and kind of reminds us how much he needs to grow up and how immature he is and inappropriate he is, which I guess from a storyline standpoint, I guess makes some sense, but it's just like, man, Wally, just stop. Like, and then the concept is really great, and it echoes back to Greg Weisman's kind of really brilliant DC showcase Green Arrow short film in a few fun ways that I'll talk about in Crashing the Mode. But the internal dialogue with Wally was really rough for me. I mean, it was a solo episode, so I can see how it would be hard to have someone for Wally to chat with or banter back and forth with. But there are ways around that I'll talk about in the debrief, and I just don't think it was handled. It was just kind of it was super annoying. Like, I don't know. So, yeah, it's a hard one to rewatch, even though I like the idea.
Yeah, there was a lot of inner monologuing and outer monologuing in this episode. Vandal monologued the bejesus out of what was happening. Vertigo monologued himself into getting arrested.
Right.
And of course, Wally is just talking to himself the entire time. We've talked about the virtues of monologuing here and there. I think that Young Justice uses it appropriately, but this episode was so full of it. It was just a lot to handle.
Yeah.
However, Batman's exposition is still the greatest. Batman just dumps facts on everybody, but the way they've established this Batman, his exposition is okay.
Well, he's given a mission, which is a little bit different. It's like establishing what the goals of the episode are in some ways, and Bruce Greenwood delivers it really well. So, I mean, that's certainly sometimes a delivery issue. You know, I mean, Alec Guinness is a brilliant actor and was able to deliver some pretty stale lines from Star Wars in a pretty impressive way. But really, though, I mean, yeah, Batman, I mean, he's given mission. The rest of it, I don't need you to tell me what's happening in front of my eyes. It's really frustrating.
Exactly. Batman also gets some of the best lines, simply sighing at Wally. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And he also, when Wally is questioning his unique mission, Batman just says, "Does it matter?"
Right. Wally, who is this girl? Does it matter?
But he doesn't even inflect it as a question.
Right.
It's a statement.
It's a statement. That's true. That's true. No. Like, Wally can't argue with it.
Of course.
I guess. Yeah. It's true.
But going back to what you said a second ago, monologuing tends to have the problem of telling us what is going on. And we know what's going on because we can see it. The flip side to that is that this episode delivers some amazing facial reactions and responses across the board.
Yeah, give some examples.
I think my favorite is Artemis during the party in the beginning. She is throwing some serious side-eye and shade, as the kids say nowadays. And when she gets to tell Wally what's going on, his reaction is just ridiculous. Yeah. Really, almost all of Wally's facial reactions to his own internal monologue, I think, went really well with it. And it really conveyed, well, frankly, his arrogance at the beginning, and then that blow he suffered when he thought he failed the mission. I think that carried it really well. And in that final fight, after he's made the decision to focus on what's important, he has that very grim determination, and we can see him shift through this episode. In view of the entire series of Young Justice, I view this episode as the turning point in Wally's career.
It really is, and it needed to happen for sure. It absolutely needed to happen. Like, Denial wasn't quite it, but it planted a seed, and I just think we needed to have an episode like this. And they pulled off of a Flash, you know, like comic story as well to kind of get inspiration for this storyline I'll talk about a little bit later. So, I mean, I get all of that. Like, I can see the mechanics. It's just somehow the gears grinded in a weird way.
There were some other great parts, though. I really loved when Wally made the choice to do what he was supposed to do.
Yeah.
In the beginning, it was very much, you're given a mission, you have to do it.
Yeah.
But then during the fight with Savage, and especially with Vertigo at the end, he said to Vertigo, "You're not my priority." when he was taking the headset off.
Right. And we've talked about that a lot in the show about how, particularly in a TV show about sidekicks, you can't have the adult characters telling them what to do. The characters need to come to these conclusions by themselves for appropriate character growth. And I agree with you. Wally needed to make these decisions, and he did, and so that's great.
One of the other things I really liked about it was kind of the discrepancy between Wally's pretty happy home life and the rest of the team.
Yeah.
Wally has not just a family, but he has multiple generations that he hangs out with. He has multiple mentors that are speedsters. He's got a lot of family.
Yep.
And this episode is coming off the tail of Zatanna losing her father.
Yep.
And that mirror of the extremes of where these sidekicks are coming from is very interesting to me. And I think that kind of speaks to why Wally is how he is.
Yeah. He's a very optimistic kid, which I think makes moments like later on in some episodes we see him having a couple of poignant conversations with Robin as a friend. And it makes us realize that he's not completely self-absorbed, just mostly self-absorbed. And positive, which we like about him, and upbeat, not grim and gritty, that kind of thing. But his optimism crosses boundaries.
But I think this episode is where we learned that there is a little bit beneath that surface, especially at the very end, where he is again in his internal monologue, but he's saying he learned a lesson.
Yeah.
But he's also outwardly saying some snappy Wally line.
Yeah. Wally wants to be a hero. Like, he loves the action. He loves being a superhero. But really, in his heart, he wants to do the right thing, and he wants to be a hero. We saw it in, like, Bereft, like when his first interaction with Artemis after they've lost their memory was one of helping.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who you are. Are you okay? You know, that kind of thing. Like, his gut reaction is a positive one. In this one, he was definitely being very, very Wally.
But consider his mentor. The Flash is the quippiest member
He's pretty quippy.
of the Justice League.
Right.
Countless times, Flash has been called the heart and soul of the Justice League. And without him elevating the rest of the members and reminding them of the importance of humanity and humor and finding the bright sides, the Justice League gets really dark or falls apart.
Right, and looking at the Justice League animated series as well, it's very key. But what I find really interesting is, of course, the Flash in that Justice League animated series, we didn't know which Flash it was for a long time. And then we find out it's Wally in the Justice League. It wasn't Barry. Barry hadn't come back to life in the comics yet when the Justice League animated series was coming out. So Wally had been the Flash for like 2 decades. So it's interesting that this Wally is very reflective of that Wally, because that Wally was super appropriate as well. Really great voice acting from Michael Rosenbaum, and a really fun character, and a required bit of comedy relief. But he's very much like this Wally, which is hitting on people, talking about bringing frozen mochas to Themyscira for all the Amazons, and just crazy, weird crap coming out of his mouth. So, in that particular series, too, they had, I mean, that was basically the basis for the whole Injustice League equivalent storyline, was that Flash had been killed in this parallel Earth, and the Justice League lost their grounding. I get it.
Yeah, Flash is always an important character, no matter what role he's filling, but knowing all those facts, I think, tells us a lot about why this Wally is how he is. 2 last things I wanted to touch on here in Feeling the Aster. I really liked that quick scene we had with Robin and Zatanna. You mentioned it already.
Yeah.
I think that was just a very nice, very brief reminder of what the 2 of them will become.
Yeah.
This is something you have touched on many times in our Canary Debrief. In storytelling, you bring up or remind the readers or the viewers multiple times before the thing becomes important.
Yeah.
So seeing these very short, not obtrusive, not dominating scenes with Robin and Zatanna, that reminds us that there is something there, and it's handled really, really well.
Yep.
The other thing I wanted to bring up, this is so minor, it's so silly, but when Wally wakes up in the hospital, he's got the stupid tropey bandages on his head. And over his armored costume. Over his armor, right. And right. Vertigo says, Don't hassle yourself. Don't stress yourself out. You'll pull your stitches.
Yeah.
What stitches? What happened? What?
Yeah, I don't know. He's still got his full costume on. How long has it been?
Yeah.
That he's been unconscious? Like, I don't know. It was definitely kind of an odd choice, I think.
It seems so tropey to me. The hero is in the hospital bed, bandage around his head, and the bad guy says something about don't exert yourself.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that is enough of feeling the Aster on this episode. We've got a lot to talk about as we move forward, so let's move right over to Canary Debrief.
Stick around. Class is in session.
Yeah, in the Canary Debrief today, I want to talk about solo episodes. Solo characters, right? So this episode is a perfect example of why you need a character for your main character to talk to most of the time. The Dr. Watson as a character, which is basically what every character like this is referred to as now in literature, he was created specifically to be a reader viewpoint character. But he was also a filter for Holmes's kind of more unsavory, insulting character traits. If we had just watched Holmes walk around solving mysteries and telling everybody else how stupid they were, not a very warm and caring character. We need Dr. Watson, who is a skilled, world-traveled, war-weary doctor and very smart. When he doesn't get it, we're like, oh, he doesn't get it either. Okay, so I don't feel so dumb. And then that makes Holmes look even more insightful in what he's doing, right? Plus, it gives him somebody to quip off of, to talk about, to make enigmatic comments to. Otherwise, he's just walking around quietly by himself. So Wally spends a lot of time talking to himself in this episode, and in many cases, the dialogue feels forced, and it feels as if the author just needs to get data across, and he's making Wally say stuff so that we have the data. It falls into the give information part of my holy trinity of every scene should develop character, give information, and move plot, but it fails in pretty much all the others. The entire episode as a whole manages to develop Wally's character with a bit of a hammer, give information, and move the plot, the meta plot of the season forward, but the individual scenes just don't pull it off, which makes them feel kind of flat. In addition, I just can't remember another time in the series in which we've heard a character talk inside their head when it wasn't through a telepathic link with some purpose. So the first-person perspective is kind of odd, and it's riddled with what are sometimes called filter words or perspective words that don't make a lot of sense. So basically, Wally's saying things like, I can't believe this, or I really want this. And it seems kind of like a subtle difference, but for example, when he's saying like, I'm out of snacks, as he pops open his snack case, I would love a chicken whizzy. We don't tend to speak to ourselves like that in our heads, and it feels excessive. A scene where he popped open his snack container, we could see that it was empty, and then running past the fast food sign and then groaning about a chicken, like just say chicken whizzy or something as he's going by, would have gotten the point across without the longer monologue and the kind of strange perspective words that he was putting in. So aside from that kind of fix, if you want to have a Wally episode, you have two options, basically. You either give him someone to talk to, and in this case, I think I understand why they didn't do that. Wally's constantly around other people, and he's still not learning the lessons he needs to. So if Robin was on the radio giving him advice, it would be in this case, a supporting cast character, in this case Robin, giving the main character for the episode the answers and telling him what he should be doing, right? Wally needs to make these decisions by himself, like we just discussed. The other option outside of having someone to talk to is to fall back on the non-verbal animation and character presentation that we've seen throughout the series. Caleb, you just said it. The facial expressions are great, and which also makes the dialogue feel unnecessary. It's like, why are you showing me his facial reaction about feeling sad about something and then having him telling me about the sad feeling he has that I can clearly see on the screen? It's irrelevant. And it harkens back to what I was saying about it's just as important to know what not to say as it is knowing what to say. So many of the scenes where Wally is telling us things, we could just see or imply by what was happening around him. I think his personal internal dialogue could have been cut by a solid 70%, and it would have tightened up the action and the implications. And there could be any number of reasons for that. The director for this episode has directed some other stuff. I don't know necessarily his history, but he's done Spectacular Spider-Man. He's done some Scooby-Doo. He's done animation before, but I don't think he's done animation here where he understood that there were the use of facial expressions and other techniques that they use in this series is something that they don't use in other shows. So I don't know if he even knew that that was basically kind of an option. I'm not sure. But it was something that I think could have been tightened up. So make sure to get your edits in. Make sure to talk to yourself out loud when you're writing your dialogue. And if it sounds weird and forced when you're saying it out loud to yourself, then it is likely weird and forced on the page. And that's my Canary Debrief.
Well, apparently I am more Wally than I realize, because my internal monologue is very similar to what Wally was saying in this episode. And as we have just learned, I am not narrating properly.
Yes, narrate your life better, Caleb.
Well, Rich, you're teaching me so much about story here. I guess I just need to apply it to myself as a form of self-help and motivation.
Right.
So with that debrief wrapped up, let's move over to crashing the mode.
Tell us something we don't know yet.
Sorry, BB. We can't risk altering the time stream. We do that, we're all feeling the mode.
From this point forward, we are going to be talking about spoilers specific to this episode and Young Justice in general, but also the larger DC universe. If you would like to avoid these spoilers, if you're watching Young Justice for the first time, please stop listening and come back later. If you're still here, we're going to crash the mode.
Yeah, let's do it. One thing I didn't notice until I watched this episode, again for this thing, was the fact that two of the high schools that were closed for school were Spizak High School and Dubuque. Dubuque is, of course, Nicole Dubuque, who we were just talking about, and Spizak is the last name of the character, the voice actor for The Flash. Never noticed it before. So now that we've been doing the show and we've been diving into this a little bit deeper is when I finally noticed it.
Yeah, we also saw the number 16 pop up again. This time it was right at the very beginning when Wally was waking up.
Yeah, who sets their alarm for like 7:16 in the morning?
Well, when you can get ready in probably
4 minutes,
second, it doesn't matter.
That's fair. You make a solid point, my friend. Yeah, so as some of the other stuff too, Steve Bloom, of course, did the voice for Count Vertigo. And the thing was that he was also the voice of Count Vertigo in Greg Weisman's DC Showcase short, Green Arrow, which is fantastic. And we should put a link to that in the show notes. Amazing. As you mentioned before, Ariel Winter, she is Queen Perdita, but she basically reprises her role from that same DC Showcase short as Queen Perdita as well. And then Steve Bloom voices in this episode of Young Justice the character of Henchy. And Henchy is the henchman, of course, who first takes the heart from Wally and tells him that the Queen had died 12 minutes ago. But the thing is, if you watch that DC Showcase, Henchy's in that as well. He looks exactly the same. He's animated exactly the same and gets in a pretty cool choreographed melee fight with Green Arrow. That was pretty awesome. You should go check that out.
We will definitely put the link for that in the show notes and on our resources page. And I think during our Feeling the Aster segment, you also touched a little bit on an echo from this episode to another Flash story in the comics, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thanks to the ever-helpful YJ Wiki, what I normally do for these episodes is I go through and I put all my notes in and the things that I noticed, and then I go to the YJ Wiki and say, like, what did I miss? And then we bring it up and I credit them, and in this case, this is a big one, too. I didn't realize that there was a story in the comics that echoes this story that was in The Flash, where Wally, who was the Flash at the time, has to run a heart from New York to San Francisco. This time it's on his 20th birthday. And he encounters Vandal Savage along the way. There's no big meta plot. I think the Vandal Savage thing was just, he rolled a random encounter and Vandal Savage showed up. I'm not sure what the storyline was there. But in this case, it's kind of You don't want Vandal Savage on your random encounter chart.
I mean, that was like the 1, right?
right, or the 100.
Either way, it was 100. It was a 1% chance to get Vandal Savage, and he rolled a 1%.
And there he is. So I don't know what the whole point was there. I think he was just going toe to toe with Flash for whatever reason. But there was that. So thanks, YJ Wiki. Go over there, man. There's so much stuff. All the language translations they have over there and stuff. It's pretty awesome. But the other thing that I wanted to mention, which I thought was great, was this specific reference to the Watchtower not being weaponized in Young Justice, because that is a huge plot point in the first season of Justice League Unlimited. After Star-Crossed, the 3-part movie, where Hawkgirl's Thanagarian people show up and invade Earth, right after that, they weaponize the Watchtower. And then during the first few episodes of Justice League Unlimited, they're dealing with, it's the Dark Heart episode. They fire the weapon to create a trench around this alien object, this alien spaceship, to try and slow it down. And that's when the U.S. government realizes that the Watchtower's weaponized and can blow everybody up if they want, which leads to this paranoia about the Justice League and, all this kind of stuff. Such a good storyline. It's fantastic stuff. I love that they specifically say in here, yeah, we don't do that. We don't play that way.
This was also one of the first times up to this point in the season that the Watchtower has been brought up directly.
Right.
Previous to this, I believe Roy talked about it in the pilot episode.
Yep.
I think there were 1 or 2 moments where someone brought it up and was shushed immediately.
Yeah.
Because at this point in this universe, the Watchtower is a secret from everyone, including a lot of the heroes and sidekicks.
Yeah. It doesn't get publicized officially until into season 2.
Mm-hmm.
When the Reach ambassadors I'm sorry. Did I accidentally reveal your secret space-based base of operation? Oh, well.
Yeah, that is actually a huge point in the season 2 political intrigue that we'll get into. So that's exciting.
Yeah, and that's the scene where you're talking about where Batman just sighs. Well, he's like, can't you just blow it away with the Watchtower? And Zatanna's all, what's a Watchtower?
But other than that, there really was not much else to crash here.
No?
Beyond knowing that Vandal is part of the Light, which was already revealed.
Right.
We see him working with Vertigo here, but this does not seem to connect to that larger meta plot. This seems to be just someone owed someone a favor kind of thing, or
right, exactly,
it was mutually beneficial for this this encounter.
We also do see, and I think you mentioned this earlier, maybe offline, that we get to see Vandal Savage physically going toe-to-toe. Aside from his immortality, he's basically just a human. He's a Cro-Magnon human. So he's strong, he's fast. I assume he's probably done things over 50,000 years to make himself better. But he's basically still, at best, he's like a Captain America level normal person, by probably less than that. Yet he almost manages to grab Wally. He doesn't quite get him, but he almost gets him. And to think that a normal human could actually time this to be able to grab a speedster like that is so interesting. Plus, he just mops the floor with those cops.
Yeah, Vandal has always been one of my favorite villains simply because he's Lex to a larger degree. Mm-hmm. He's a schemer. He's a planner. He lurks in the background using knowledge and turning people against each other. Yeah. Lex does it in a very modern, real time frame, and he's better at it. Vandal is just, I've been doing this for 50,000 years. I know everything. Yep. He's not super intelligent. He's not super powered. He just literally has learned everything.
Yep. He's playing the long con.
He is the long con.
He is the long con. That's true. Another, great Justice League episode 2 was the one where Superman gets shunted to the future, and Vandal's the only one left on the planet and has kind of learned a lesson That was a really good one. I can't remember what that was. I think it was The Red Sun.
I remember the episode, but I don't remember the title.
Basically, Vandal destroys the world, and he's the only one left.
And then he's bummed about it.
And he's like, yeah, after like, I don't know what he was, 50,000 years of being alone, maybe I should send Superman back to stop me. Don't let me do that. That was stupid. Yeah, fantastic.
Alrighty, well, I think we can consider this mode crashed. Let's move on to a little bit of fan service. Rich, you've got something special for us this week.
Yeah, I do. A little bit more art, actually. So thanks to our listeners.
Hello, team. Sorry to interrupt. This is Caleb from the future, or the present, depending on your perception of the podcast timeline. We noticed a tactical error while editing this episode, and I wanted to make a correction. The fan service that Rich had originally shared was a duplicate, and we did not want to leave you feeling shorted, so I wanted to add in something new. And Rich actually beat me to it. He mentioned it during this episode, the DC Showcase Green Arrow animated short. It is on YouTube. The link is in the show notes. Watch it right now. You will absolutely enjoy it. I think the best part about this episode, other than the really good animation, is the really funny voice casting, especially considering what is happening right now in the CW Arrow universe. So go check it out, and I now return you to your regularly scheduled podcast. And speaking of that, we, as always, want to remind you out there to send cool things our way. If you are a creator, if you simply know a creator or know a cool site to go look some stuff up on, let us know. We have been getting a lot of really cool suggestions over the past couple weeks, and we absolutely appreciate them. Guys, that means so much to us, because that means you are sharing something you love and you know about with us, as we are sitting here sharing what we love with you guys. So this community is growing. We absolutely appreciate that. Please continue to send us links. We always love talking to new creators and possibly getting some stuff scheduled for interviews or discussions down the road. So please get a hold of us via email, via Twitter, via the website, via Facebook, anything like that. And with all that out of the way, I think it is time to wrap up this episode and head out of the cave. As always, thank you so much for listening. We truly appreciate the time you have given us today. So please remember to feel the Aster, and see you later, Armadillos.
Oh, you're really adopting that, aren't you? Also,
I'm committed to the bit.
Committed. You got to commit. We should commit you. So also, everybody, hashtag keep binging YJ, hashtag Young Justice Season 3, or hashtag YJ3 if you need more room. Hashtag buy YJ Comics on Comixology so that we can get some more tie-in comics with the TV series and the Season 3 that's coming out. And remember, as always, stay whelmed, everybody.
You've been listening to Whelmed, the Young Justice Files podcast. Our computer is voiced by Madison Ray. Our theme was composed by Emily Mio. Our logo was created by Kevin Bates. Whelmed is a fan-made podcast and is not officially affiliated with DC Comics, DC Entertainment, Warner Brothers Animation, and any other owners of Young Justice or its related source material. As such, these companies have sole ownership of all symbols, images, names, logos, and proprietary material related to Young Justice. Original content of this podcast is ours under Creative Commons. Thanks for listening, and stay whelmed.